I mean, he's acting as the GM, Mike. I don't think maybe the title doesn't matter as much, but he's the one making these moves and making these calls on these trades and these signings. So if you want to call him the general manager, if you want to call him the executive vice president of football operations, if you want to call him Howie, the Wonder Kid, I don't think he'll care at this point. He just, as long as the moves work out, he'll be fine with whoever you call him.
Of the things he's done, what has impressed you the most, if anything? I mean, is this stuff that, hey, anybody could have done this stuff, or is this something that he should be given legitimate credit for?
Well, the signings are one thing. I mean, it's relatively easy, I think, to go out and pinpoint guys who are already in the league and are good, and figure out how to pay them enough money to get them to come to your team. I think the truest test of how much he's changed and how successful he's going to be is how the draft turns out this year and years to come. But of the moves he's made so far this offseason, the trade with the Dolphins that involved Byron Maxwell and Kiko Alonso really impressed me because it showed that he understood implicitly who he was dealing with in the trade, and that was Dolphins Vice President Mike Tannenbaum. He and Roseman have been close friends for a while, and Roseman, I think, understood the position that Tannenbaum was in. This is, wrote about this in my column for Sunday, that the Dolphins are in win-now mode. They've made the playoffs once in 15 years. Tannenbaum has always been in that mode as a general manager. Remember, he was the Jets GM for 6 years. He studied under Bill Parcells. He's a believer in bringing veteran guys and try to do it right now if you can. And so, it's not surprising that Roseman targeted the Dolphins as a team who might be willing to take on the salaries of Maxwell and Alonso, and might be willing to give up something in the draft to do it. And so I give Howie a lot of credit for understanding, okay, what team can I work with in this regard, and what can I get to counterbalance the idea that we're losing a cornerback and losing a linebacker. And even though they weren't very good last year, we're still creating holes that we're going to have to fill, presumably, at some point this offseason.
And is that something that, whether you like Roseman or not, that was lacking in the previous regime, that Roseman, whether you like his eye for talent maybe, knows when and where he can kind of make his calls?
Yeah, I think Roseman understood and understands the market for player value in a way that Chip Kelly never did. I mean, look, when Chip was going on that spree last year, signing DeMarco Murray and signing Byron Maxwell and trading LaShawn McCoy for Alonso and all that, I try to take a step back and say, okay, the guy's coming off 2 10-6 seasons. He's done that with Nick Foles and Michael Vick and Mark Sanchez. Let's see what happens here. He's getting his first chance to run a team. Maybe he sees something that everybody else doesn't. Well, we looked at what happened last year, and at least for 1 year, whatever he saw did not materialize. So, and I think one of the big flaws there was that he was just kind of, I'm going to go out and pay whatever these guys want, and if we win and it turns out great, then they'll be worth the money. Well, you can't always act that way. Sometimes you have to have often you have to have a knowledge of what a guy is really worth, what other teams are willing to pay for him. And, are you really getting value for a particular signing or a particular player in a trade? And I think Roseman has a better understanding of that, of who you can get in the draft, when, that sort of thing. Now, it doesn't mean that he can evaluate talent all that well. His record there has been spotty at best. Go back and look at the 2010 and 2011 drafts for all the evidence you need. But this trade, I think, kind of played to his strengths.
I do. I feel like Roseman's interesting cat. He reminds me of like the front office version of Sam Bradford. There always seems to be excuses built in for these guys. But those 2011 and 2010 drafts, was Reed in more control than Roseman was? Was he kind of the be-all, end-all guy, but Roseman was labeled the GM, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that anybody knows who was really pulling the trigger on all those picks, just like we don't know who pulled the trigger on Marcus Smith in 2013. The Eagles sell a lot of gobbledygook about being collaborative and all that sort of thing. The fact is, Roseman was in charge of the player personnel department then, and Reed had an awful lot to say. So one way or another, Roseman was involved in those picks. I don't think it was a matter of Andy Reid just saying, I'm making these picks, Howie, get out of the way.
Well, because in 12, when they drafted Fletcher Cox, I think Michael Kendricks, they had a really good draft, and that was the year where they kind of said, well, we used to go off of Andy's draft board, but this year we're leaning more on Howie's draft board, and that was a good draft. And I feel like sometimes he doesn't get the credit for the good picks more so than the bad picks. I don't know, because it seems like there was a lot of murkiness in the years that they picked poorly.
Yeah, I think that's purposeful on their part so that, you can't point at one person and say, okay, it's this guy's fault. Who knows, but as long as Roseman has been technically in charge of the player personnel operations, their draft record has been inconsistent. So, and we're not going to know, how good his picks in this year's draft will turn out to be for another couple of years. So we'll see. We'll see how much he's learned. We'll see, how he uses this number 8 overall pick. It would not surprise me if there was a quarterback available that they took a quarterback, but they obviously had a lot of needs on the offensive line, the defensive secondary, even at linebacker. So we'll see.
Mike Sielski, Philly.com, The Inquirer, with a piece on Howie Roseman where, Mike, do you feel that he did learn a lot from kind of getting demoted? I mean, for all intents and purposes, he was demoted, even though he got promoted. This is what he really wants to do. So do you feel that that was actually good for him and that he legitimately learned from his hiatus?
It's too early to say. I mean, we're really early in this process. I don't know that I don't know what he's learned, if anything. There's a piece on the Monday Morning Quarterback today about his decision to keep Chip Kelly, sports science guy, around, and there's Howie paying a lot of lip service to learning, but we're not going to really know until we see how the Eagles operate moving forward. Look, what's happened so far in this offseason are things that Howie was always really good at. He was really good at signing guys in the offseason, free agents. He was very good at it in 2011, but that didn't work out. The challenge becomes, can you make good picks, solid picks in the draft? Can you run an organization in a facet so that you keep quality people in the front office so you're not losing people like Louis Riddick and Jason Light and, a number of other people who have left over time, Tom Gamble, who are highly regarded around the league. Let's just see. It's easy to win the offseason. It looks good right now. It looks like the Eagles have acquired some solid players, but, last year we were all talking about how, the Eagles had stolen DeMarco Murray away from the Cowboys, and it crippled the Cowboys, and we're going to run away with the NFC East. Well, we were half right. The Cowboys were crippled, but the Eagles certainly didn't run away with the division.
In the end, will we be talking about Howie Roseman as the GM of this football team again, or is he just keeping the seat warm?
Oh, I think he's in charge of the player personnel for a long while. I don't see them bringing in an experienced GM or player personnel guy at all, no. Because Howie is here.
Well, were they intending to, and that he has kind of erased that from their checklist?
Well, no. I mean, there was never an indication that they were really going to bring in an experienced person. They might have brought in somebody to study under him, but there's a reason he stayed around while Chip Kelly was running things for the year that he was running things. It's because Jeffrey Lurie likes him and trusts him, and if Chip Kelly screwed up, which he did, then Jeffrey was going to go back to Howie. So once you know that dynamic, there's very little chance that the Eagles are going to bring in somebody to work above Howie, and there's even less of a chance that a person of stature would come in to work for Howie. So he's the guy right now. They may bring in somebody else to work under him to learn from him, but he's the man.
It sounds, too, that above all, as you mentioned in this article, it's written about the Miami deal, but also the ability to get rid of a guy like DeMarco Murray and get anything in that deal should be applauded as well.
Well, I don't know yet because here's the thing.
And even if Murray excels down there, which he very well may, it's a better fit for him.
Murray made it clear he didn't want to be here. Now, I don't understand that given that they fired the coach who brought him here and was presumably the reason for his discontent. Maybe he didn't like cheesesteaks. Maybe he didn't like living in Philadelphia. I don't know. But he was, clearly did not want to be here anymore. Again, that doesn't make sense to me. You got a new offense. You got a new coaching staff. Maybe you want to give it a try. You're getting paid a lot of money to be here. So in that regard, yeah, it's good that Howie Roseman traded DeMarco Murray and got something for him. But again, if that fourth-round pick turns out to be a nothing burger of a pick, you got rid of a running back who presumably could be productive in a new offensive system. So again, we'll see. It's like I said, I'm impressed that Howie made the trade with Miami because I can see why he made it and what he was seeing there. And he got the Eagles in a position to make a really good pick in the draft, where at number 13, where they had been, you may not be able to make that pick. And he got rid of two guys who I don't think were very good and probably aren't going to be very good again. I'm not sure I felt that way about Murray, presuming he was willing to stay here. So, you know, we've got to see yet. But it's easy to say he's winning the offseason, like I said. There are a lot of teams that win the offseason that don't win the regular season and certainly don't win the Super Bowl.
And Howie has won off seasons in the past. We'll see how this time around goes for him. Mike Sielski, Inquirer columnist at Mike Sielski on Twitter. Check out the piece. It's really fun to watch how this whole deal started and went down. Good stuff, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.